things tonight. We're not going to take any notes. I don't want you to open up your books. I just want you to listen. I just want you to sit back, and I want you guys to listen. There's a couple things I want you guys to remember before I start this. At no time do I want you to think I'm glamorizing anything I did. I'm not going to give you any salacious details, all right? This isn't going to be any National Enquirer stuff. You don't need to know that. But I'm going to hit on just some points in my life that I think need to be said. I laugh at people who come here and then leave, and their reason for leaving is you're too preachy, or you're too you've been doing this your whole life. I can't doing this my whole life. Like, you don't even. If people knew where I was to where I am now, I think it'd be a little easier for them to come. My testimony is no greater than anyone else's. I don't want you guys to think that. I hate to talk about myself. I hate to talk about myself. So this is not something that is necessarily easy for me. When I first started this ministry, I told God, I said, because everyone was like, oh, you got to give your testimony the first night. And I said, no. And I prayed to God, I'm like, you tell me when you want me to do it. You tell me when you think it's ready. And he told me last week it was ready. So here we are this week. Again, I've when girls actually used to like me, I've ruined first dates. Just ruined them. Because the worst question people ask me is so tell me about yourself. What do I need to know about Walt? Nothing. I'm so scared of selfishness. I hate selfishness. That I'm so fearful of being selfish that I don't even want to talk about myself. So if I stumble a little bit tonight, if I'm not on my game, just bear with me. I don't look back to reminisce. I look back to help us all move forward, if that makes any sense to you guys. And more importantly, this is the biggest one here. Please don't sit there tonight, any of you guys listening and watching out there, I don't want anybody to sit there and think, wow, he did all that until he was 40. I'm only 30. I got 10 years to act like an idiot. I got 10 more years to party. Don't do that. Don't do that, because it's so easy to do when you hear a speaker talk. It's so easy to do. I mean, I'm sure there's people out there that think to themselves, well, that guy got saved on his deathbed, so I'm good. Well, number one, you don't know when you're going to die. You don't know when the good Lord's going to come back. You don't know when he's going to take you. None of us know. So there's no sense in playing that game. Your life's not my life. My life is not your life. I was 3 years old. 3 years old. God blessed me with a really good memory. It's amazing because all the alcohol I put in my system, I still have memory left. 3 years old when I asked God into my heart. Back in the 70s, I'm showing my age now, that was 1978. Back in the 70s, everyone, including Christians, were still trying to relive Woodstock. And there was this big movement, especially in the Christian world, of get-togethers, festivals. And right here in Mercer, 20 minutes down the road, some guy owned a farm, and he had what they called them in 77, they called them Jesus 77, Jesus 78, Jesus 79, and my parents went to these. And in 78, I remember specifically one night walking back from a concert, and we were walking back to our camper, and I asked my mom, I said, well, how do I get this Jesus? How can he be my friend? My mom said, just ask. And I, as a little 3-year-old, said something to the effect of Jesus come into my heart. And I spent the next 7 years of my life pretty much doing what little church boys do. I grew up in Sharon. I grew up on a little street called Elm Avenue, which was really turned into a nightmare on Elm Street. And you guys are allowed to laugh tonight, too. There's some funny stories. You guys can laugh. Our church was right across the street from our house. Literally, right across the street. And, you know, I made my mom happy. I memorized Bible verses. I was in all the church plays. And I did everything that little boys that go to church do. And I did that for about 7 years until I was 10. And up in Sharon, there's nowhere to play but the street. Anything you do was done in the street. If you played football, you played it in the street. If you played baseball, you played it in the streets or parking lots. That was it. So a lot of scrapes, bruises, a lot of rocks in my knees, stuff like that. And I started to realize at 10 that I was having a little more fun playing in the streets than I was going to church. And that quickly started to morph into a disdain, a dislike for religion. Because the church my parents were going to was Free Methodist. And I don't know if any of you guys know what the Free Methodists are about, but there's a term in the Bible called legalism, okay? Legalistic. It's when there's all these rules, okay? You have to do this, you have to do that. And the Free Methodist Church still believed, I remember 80-year-old women, right? This is like in the early 80s. 80-year-old women still that had hair past their butts because you weren't supposed to cut your hair. And I remember going to church camps with either the youth groups or the kids that were younger than the youth groups. And there was two places we would go. Pleasantville, Pennsylvania, or Kane, Pennsylvania. And these were already run down, dilapidated crap holes. Okay? They were junk. But you weren't allowed to bring shorts. 98 degrees in the middle of August. Don't even think about packing shorts. You weren't allowed to bring them. So I started to develop this, like, wait a minute. At 10 years old, you tell me what to do. Okay? And then, if the church was open, we were there. You know, God bless my mom and dad, but if the church doors were open, we were there. And the Free Methodists loved to have the church doors open. Every Sunday morning, every Sunday night, every Wednesday, and every Friday, every other week. And they had these things there that were called potluck dinners. Okay? And if any of you know me, to this day, I am the pickiest eater you'll ever meet. I can't stand home cooking. I don't like other people's cooking. One of the fears I have of becoming a preacher is you get invited over to people's house to eat. I won't go. Just give me a gift card. If I ever become a pastor, gift cards, guys. Just give me gift cards. Because I remember it as a little kid going to these potluck dinners and it stunk. The smell was nasty. I didn't know what was in a crock pot. To this day, I can't stand crock pots. I can't stand casseroles. I can't stand quiche or all this other junk. The first time I ever seen cut up hot dogs and beans was at one of these potluck dinners. And it just grossed me out. Disgusting. So it's funny, you know, if you look back on your past sometimes, because we all do it, it's funny how things shape you. Just the goofiest things shape you. So at 10, I couldn't stand other people's cooking. I had a hatred, for lack of a better word, for religion. And I was turning into a punk. Because for some reason, I had two groups of friends. I either hung out with guys who were 5 to 6 years older than me, or I hung out with kids who were 3 to 4 or 5 years younger than me. There was one guy on the street, my age, one boy on the street. And we lived, if you know anything about Sharon, it's all the streets are parallel, they're all in a row. And then there's little alleys cut through all these streets. So when you say the neighborhood, you had a run of anywhere, 2 or 3 streets back or 2 or 3 streets forward. So there was a big group there. And these older guys, they took me in. I don't know why. I didn't know why at the time. They took me in because if you remember when you were 16 or 17, you didn't want this little scrawny little runt 9 and 10-year-old kid hanging around you. But we'd have wiffle ball games in the hospital parking lots, the Sharon Regional Hospital down there. They'd clear out after 5 o'clock, everybody would go home, and we'd have this one particular parking lot where we'd play wiffle ball. And it was always with the older kids. And I remember all the younger kids would tag along with me, and them older guys were like, no, you only. So now I was starting to get cocky. Because I had all these older guys that wanted me there. They wanted me playing baseball with them. They wanted me playing football with them. But they didn't want these other little kids. So then when the older guys weren't around, them other little kids were on my tail. Whatever I did, they wanted to do. So now, I have a problem with religion, and I'm starting to develop this cocky attitude. The other thing is that in the streets, at 10 years old, I quickly found out that the street girls were a little friendlier than the church girls. Let's just say that they were doing a little more than trying to hold my hand in a pew and giggle. My dad did not have to give me the birds and the bees talk. Didn't have to do it. Because the girl down the street took care of that. 10 years old. And this is how it went. This is how it went for the next few years of my life. All through my teenage years. Cocky. Looked at women as possessions. Got anything I wanted off them. Did anything I wanted in the streets. Had all these younger kids thinking I was God. Developed a very unhealthy attitude in my head. Funny story I'll tell you guys about how bad it got. I lived in a 2-story house. I was 12 years old. 2-story house. I was upstairs. My bedroom was right above the living room. So when my parents were having a conversation, you could hear bits and pieces of it. And I used to get out of my bed and walk around to where the steps were and lean up against the wall and eavesdrop on all their conversations. So one night I remember there was a knock on the door and my dad went to answer it and I'm like, oh, I wonder what this is about. So I go around, I go to the steps and I'm listening and I'm hearing my dad and this kid talking. Yeah, Tom. Oh, okay. So you have from that street to that street? Oh, I get it. So then he collects and then he gives it, okay. Can he start tomorrow? Great. I'm like, what the heck is he doing? So I went to bed and woke up the next morning. And of course my dad woke up because he had to go to work and he's like, I got you a job. You got me a job? Yeah, playtime's over. Got that deal. And of course that immediately, heck you talking to? You know, 12-year-old punk. Playtime's over. You start a paper route. When you come home from school today, you're going to follow Tommy around for 2 days, and then he's giving it to you next week. I was so hot. I remember walking to school that day. Lord knows what the words I was using on my dad. And I kept thinking to myself, who the heck does he think he is? A job? I'll get my own job. And a paper route? No crummy paper route. What do I look like? I ain't getting no paper route. And I devised this plan on the way to school. I did the paper route right for a month. And then I said, you know what? This isn't working. Back then, you would go collect. It was like you were the mailman. You would go to these individual houses and you would collect. And they had these little cards that once they paid, you click the card with a little hole puncher. And you would take that money, and then you would take that money down to the Herald once a month, okay, to the main office in downtown Sharon, and then they'd take their cut, and they'd cut you a check for your cut. Well, 1 month, I took all the money and spent it all. We went down to this little store in Sharon called Mike's Corner Market. It was this little, just a little convenience store that it was old school. All right, the old guy behind the meat counter was still cutting meat. And I remember I got all my friends together. It was one of the best days of their life. Because back then, you were happy to have a nickel. You know, 5-cent candy. There was still penny candy back then. So if you had $1 for a package of Twinkies, you were really living large. Oh, I went in there, I'm like, forget them. I'm buying 24 packs of Twinkies. Get that pack of Twinkies over there. Cans of pop? No, we're getting 2 liters. Get it on the house. Boom, 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 boom. I did this every day for a month. Phone rings one day in my house. My dad, yeah, really? I could tell him he was getting madder and madder. Bad day when he got off the phone. I don't know how he paid for it. I know the amount was significant, what I owed the Herald. I knew that a couple days later, I had to go down to Herald. I had to go talk to some manager. I had to apologize to him. I think some of the money came out of my savings account. I'm pretty sure some of the money came out of my parents' savings account. And I was happy. I was like, got you. Give me a job. Got you. Because they were like, yeah, you don't need to be a paperboy anymore. What a punk! What an absolute punk! But that's who I was, you know? It's no wonder me and my father had a hellacious relationship growing up. Because that went on and on and on and on and on. And when I became 16, $700 could get you a decent ride back then. And $700 got me a 1979 Chevy Malibu. And me being me, I fixed this car up, put big tires on it, big exhaust, made it loud, and I couldn't. It was burgundy. I can't have that. What's the one color that they say don't paint if you don't want attention? Red. I painted this car. It was the brightest red you guys have ever seen. This car was so bright red that under fluorescent lights it was almost orange. So anybody knew Walt was coming. When I came around the corner, Walt was coming. Bright red car, loud car, just an absolute pump. The day I got my driver's license, my parents went on vacation. I told them I can't go on vacation. Why? Because I got a job. I played into my dad. You know, he wanted me to have a job. So I got a job. Okay, I did. I had a job at the local grocery store, but I didn't go to work. I went and, you know what, with some chick, you know? And again, and so it went. And so it went. More punk, more cocky, more women. Got to be about 18, and nothing was changing in my life. Still had my car. That's the only reason I got jobs. Because what did that paper route show me? That paper route did nothing. Instead of learning the value of $1, I learned that if I had money in my hands, I was going to spend it on whatever I wanted to spend it on. So any job I had went all in my car. My car was my pride and joy. I would take money aside, I'd put it in for the gas, I'd put the rest in the car. When I was 18, I had friends that had $2-3 grand in the bank already. How the heck did you do that? What do you mean? Don't you have a job? Yeah? Well, then you should have, I got $2 grand in the bank. I got mag wheels in my car. I got big chrome rims in my car. My car's loud. I bought a new carburetor for my engine. Blah, 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 blah. When I was 18, more problems with authority. I was working at County Market in Sharon. It was where there's a counseling center now across from the AT&T. And I remember I got hired there and I was working in the produce section. And that was, you know, produce. Because back then, everyone was a bagger, you know? If you were 17 or 18, you bagged. That's it, you bagged. But that's right, produce. Why are you working produce? Because I'm Walt. That's what I tell people. Because I'm Walt. And I worked for this little old man. And I remember doing stuff, and Michael McDonald owned this store. This guy couldn't stand me. We had this pineapple thing where you take a pineapple, you cut one end, you cut the other end, then you put it in this slicer, and it would slice this perfect, it was supposed to make a perfectly round pineapple core. I remember this one lady came in one night, and she was acting all snotty and stuff, and I was on my 3rd or 4th pineapple, and I couldn't get it the way she wanted, so I just took the stinking pineapple and said, here, you do it. Do it. You ain't telling me what to do. Got in trouble for that. That's the attitude I had. That's how I treated people. It was all about me. What I'm going to do. You're not going to tell me what to do. I don't care about authority. I don't care that that's part of my job. July 4th that year, 1993, they're like, you got to work. What? I just went with my buddies the day before and threw $100 into fireworks over in Hubbard. I got a trunk load of fireworks. You got to work. And it was like 2 to 10, 3 to 11 or something like that. Completely ruined my 4th of July plans. So, I said, you know what? They're going to make me work. I'm going to bring 4th of July into the store. I took my smoke bombs, I took my stink bombs, and I lit them off right in the produce section. Just where I was. That's who I was. I got kicked out of there. They called me the next day. Of course, they fired me. They claimed I had done $10,000 worth of damage to produce. I don't know if I believe that, because, you know, back then, old people would just say things to scare you. And I think if I would have done that much damage, they probably would have tried to recoup it. But, just an idiot. just a punk. So now, that was July 4th. So now we're getting into August, right? No job. All my friends were headed out to college because I could have cared less about grades. I could have cared less about grades. I had to go to summer school just to get my diploma. I had to take an 8th grade math course in summer school just to be able to graduate. I didn't care. All I wanted to do was sleep with chicks, drive my car, and work. That's it. That's all I wanted to do. Well, that was before systems. All right? That was before stereo systems. We're talking 1993. So there was no big amps. There was no big subwoofers. No one was building stuff in the trunk. Your trunks, unfortunately, back then were pretty much meant for whatever beverage of choice you had and a blanket so you could go park somewhere. That was what we did with our trunks back then. You had one option for speakers, okay? They were called 6x9s. They were the factory speakers. And if you wanted to have a good stereo system, you could do two things. You could put a cassette player in your dash, and you could put upgraded 6x9s in the rear of the car. And I remember I was bored. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to get some new 6x9s for my car. And I walked into Walmart, and this was when the Walmart in Hermitage was where the Home Depot is. So we're talking a while back. There was no super Walmart at that point. And as usual, even in 1993, there was 26 registers. Only 3 people were, only 3 people were working. And I just wanted to go home and install my stinking 6x9s. I just wanted to go home and install my speakers. And I wasn't even thinking about what lane I was in. Because normally back then, I'd be like, oh man, what's she look like? Well, I'm going to go in this line. I didn't care how long the line was. I didn't care. I just wanted to get in, get out that night. And I remember going through this line, and there was some girl there, and she wasn't anything to look at. I mean, didn't do anything for me or anything. And she was looking at me weird. And I remember myself thinking, yeah, you ain't got a chance. Just give me my speakers. And she wrote on the receipt her number. She looked me in the eye and said, I'm going to marry you. Weirdo. And I left. Took the receipt, took the speakers, and I left. That was probably a Tuesday or Wednesday night. That weekend, Friday night, sitting around the house, 18, ain't no way I'm going to sit around this house tonight. Wait a minute. Well, I got nothing to do. All my friends are gone. They're all in college. It was just me. No job. No friends. Oh, I got that number. I got that number. This will be too easy. Take her to the movies. The girl had such an agenda. I was so stupid that I couldn't even see it. Take her home that night. Her parents are in the house. She's like, come on, sleep with me. I'm like, nah, your parents are in the house. What are you, nuts? Let's go drive somewhere. She's like, no, sleep with me. Ended up on her kitchen floor, okay? For the next 3 months, August, September, October, yeah. For the next 2 or 3 months, that was it. That was it. We would go get something to eat, and we would sleep with each other. And it got to the point, like, I grew up, my parents were Christian, remember? They raised me in a church. Her mom said, well, since her dad goes to work at midnight, instead of you guys parking or going somewhere where I don't know where you're at, you can just stay here. So I basically moved in with this chick, okay? Unbeknownst to me, this girl had every intention of marrying me because she told me she was on the pill. And I'm going around bragging, yeah, I'm banging this chick every night, dude. She's on the pill. It's easy, it's easy money. Wasn't on the pill. 1st of November, I'm pregnant. Huh? I'm pregnant. Now all of a sudden, cocky boy who thought he had the world by his hand, boy who thought he was invincible, boy who thought he could do whatever he wants. Oh boy. Oh boy. Now what? Pregnant. Some of you guys have kids. You remember the first time you were told you're pregnant? Hopefully it was joyous. Maybe for some of you it was, you know? I don't know. But that's what it was for me. And I quickly remembered something I had forgot. I was 18. And all of a sudden, I thought about, oh shoot, God, what the heck? How did I get myself into this? And I did what I said we do a few weeks ago. It was so bad that I said, dear Lord, well, you got to help me get out of this. What am I going to do? And I quickly jogged back to all of my memories of growing up, and I said, oh my goodness, I got to marry this chick. That's the right thing to do. I got to marry this girl. And I don't want to marry this girl. This girl, God bless her, had some issues. You know, she had some mental issues. She it wasn't, she had spent some time in some children's youth service hospitals for mental stuff. My life is screwed. I mean, I'm screwed. She was happy. This girl was happy. I remember telling her parents. Her mom was like, oh, yeah. I'm like, what is going on in my life? They were happy. Her dad came up to me and was like, well, you know, it could be worse, man, out there. I'm glad she's with you. Like, oh my goodness, I didn't even think about telling my parents. Didn't think about telling them. We had to go to the gynecologist. The gynecologist was in Greenville. Stuff started to get real. Stuff started to get real. I'll never forget this date as long as I live. The baby was due on July 4th, 1994. That was the baby's due date, July 4th. So if I ever get weird on July 4th, now you know why. I'm like, I got to tell my parents. And I'll never forget, they had hardly seen me at this point. I was basically living with this chick. I called them up one day. I said, me and her are coming over. We got to tell you something. Well, of course, my dad probably wasn't a dummy at that point. He knew what I was coming over for. We went over and we sat at the kitchen table, and my dad was sitting there, my mom was sitting there, and hey, she's pregnant. We're going to get married. My mom starts bawling, just hysterical. So I'm like, oh, man, I'm such an idiot. What have I done with my life? Idiot! My dad's sitting there yelling at me, what are you going to do for money? What are you going to do with this? You know, you ain't got a job. You got to sell that car. Shut up! I got this. I didn't have it. I had nothing. Mom's bawling. Get up and leave. Go back to her house. Week before Thanksgiving. It was a weekend. Girl has all these pains. You know, she's hurting. She's going to the bathroom a lot. I'm like, Monday I'll take you to the, back over to the doctor, to the gynecologist. All right. Go to the gynecologist on Monday. Blah, blah, blah. Does whatever. Does his test. Comes in the room, says, I got bad news for you guys. She lost the baby. I didn't know what to think. I had no idea what to think. I remember driving home from Greenville. This girl was bawling her eyes out because her plan had diminished. Her plan had fell through. I'm like, oh my goodness. I didn't know if I was to feel elated, if I was to feel bad for this girl. I didn't know what to think. And remember, I went home, I took her right to her house, and we told her mom, and her mom was like, of course, she was hysterical. She was crying. And I'll never forget this. We ate dinner, and we were sitting in the living room, and her dad called me into the kitchen. I'll never forget this. He goes, I know that this is a tough time for her, and I know that you were manning up and marrying her. Do yourself a favor. Get out. Don't marry my daughter. I'm not going to tell you this to be weird. I'm just telling you. Get out. Get your life right. Dad, why is he telling me this? It hit me. It hit me. I'm like, holy crap, God, no way. And I wrestled with that. I wrestled with that for years. Like, God, you took life. You took life. It was weird to me. But I knew there was no way. That was not his plan. That was not his plan for me to marry that girl. That was not his plan for me to have a child to that girl. Can you imagine My life would have been so altered at that point. And he saved me. He saved me from that. I don't know why. I don't know how. But he saved me from that. And I was cool for a couple weeks. I opened my Bible back up. I went to church. My parents were going to this church now, which was down in Farrell. And I got a job at Joy Cone Company. And back then, Joy Cone Company was predominantly women. It was probably 15 women for every one guy that worked there. And they didn't have uniforms back then. And it was hot in there. And it was a factory. So most of the girls in there wore nothing more than spandex shorts and halter tops. And I'd be sitting there packing my cup. And I forgot. I forgot all about what God did for me. And I went right back into that life. I went right back into that life with the women. Bought another car. Threw all kinds of money into it. It got so bad that I was sleeping with women who were having affairs with other people. Twisted. Just absolutely twisted. Talk about giving God the middle finger. He had taken me through my 18 years, got me through all that mess, even though I made a bunch of stupid mistakes. He took me through my ridiculous mistake of sleeping with that girl every night, saved me from that, and all I could do was go right back to living the way I wanted to live. Right back to doing the same stupid things that got me in trouble in the first place. Talk about giving God two middle fingers. Because it was back to what Walt wants to do. Bless you. It was my plans. My plans. I'm going to fix this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do what I want to do. Got a job at a Chevrolet dealership. Started working on cars. And then out of the blue one day, I still to this day don't know what made me do it. But I'm driving down the road and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do something in my life. I'm going to go to college. I'm not going to ask my parents to pay for it, so I'm going to go in the military. How true is this? How true is one decision in your life can change the entire course of your future? One decision. And I don't have a lot of time, but let me tell you what that one decision did. And to know me then, to think I was going to go in the military, remember, I couldn't stand authority. I hated authority. So you can imagine how my boot camp went. They knew my name on day one. And the recruiter kept telling me, whatever they do, don't let them know your name. Be a fly on the wall. Whatever you do, do not. They knew who Urema was, affectionately called about 15,000 other things that I can't repeat here, on day one. Needless to say, my chest got pretty big doing push-ups. That one decision led to all these things. Attending Clarion University, where I literally, this is not a joke, majored in smoking, yingling, and women. Okay? Played in one of the most successful bands in Clarion County. Played the bass. Snorted coke. Met the woman I would marry. Went to war. And got divorced. Because I was in my truck one day thinking to myself, I'm going to go to college. Now, where did that come from? Where did that come from? Where did that thought come from? If you look at it now, if you look back now, that was God. That was God. And all through all that stuff, He wanted me to learn some type of leadership. He wanted me to go and get my head out of my butt when it came to authority. Because, as I told you guys a few weeks ago, when I finally got myself right, when I finally started respecting authority, when I finally figured out that I was half decent at the military, I excelled. I excelled. When I was over in Iraq, I was put in charge of a squad, you know? I had no business doing any of this stuff. I had no business seeing what I saw in Iraq. We were completely detached from our unit. Upset him. It upset him because he loved us all and he wanted us all together. I told you guys before, they took 18 of us and they shoved us to a whole different place. I had security clearances upon security clearances. I watched generals go in and call presidents. I had no business seeing this stuff. Because God was with me. God was with me. This girl I married. Met her one night playing in the bar in Clarion. The only reason I was talking to her was because she had big hair and big chest. That's it. It's the only reason I was talking to her. In fact, when I left to go to the war, I had all my bags packed because I ended up moving in with her too. That's what I did. I moved around from place to place. Apartments, trailers, different girls' places. Just moved here and there, here and there. I remember when I got called to war, I packed all my bags up. We weren't married yet because I knew. I'm like, I'm out of here. You know, I was known back then. Oh, Walt's with somebody? Don't worry. He'll be single again. Once he sleeps with her, he'll be single again. You'll get your chance, honey. That's what people knew me for. Don't worry. He'll be single in a month or two. It was disgusting. And I got what I wanted from her. And I was packing my bags up. I had everything back to my house, and we got shipped overseas. And I remember as soon as we got overseas, you know, war does funny things to you. It does. It makes you, well, it enhances everything. It enhances your feelings. It enhances your emotions. It enhances your senses. So if you miss something, you think you really miss it. And if you feel like you love something, then you think you really love it. And I remember all these dudes, they were getting these letters, and their women were dropping off like flies, you know. This guy, she stole his truck. This girl left him. That girl was sleeping with somebody else. And this girl, who I really didn't want anything to do with, was going to my parents' house every weekend. And I'm like, what the heck is this about? And it got to the point where we started to get some money. Because you get paid over there, you can't do anything with it. You know, you can only buy so many Cokes for turkey that don't taste like Coke. So you start getting money, you know, and the conversation starts, what are you going to do with your money? What are we going to do with your money? Well, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to pay my car, I'm going to pay my house off. I was single, right? I'm like, I hatched this plan, literally, that I was going to go to California and make adult movies. And no, listen, don't laugh. I did not think that I was some stud. Okay? I did not think that I was going to go with the quote-unquote good-looking models. Let's just say there are some genres out there that are not pretty. And I was just going to drive out to California and get in them genres. That's what I was going to do. That was my plan. Stupid. Stupid. See, you guys think I'm intelligent? You wouldn't know me back then. You would not know me. Long story short, I ended up marrying this girl. Probably a good thing. Because who knows what would have happened. Maybe I would have broke down halfway to California. I don't know. But I ended up marrying this girl. I don't consult God about it. I don't pray about it. I just married this girl. And in fact, the night before the wedding, I knew in my gut. Remember I told you guys your gut doesn't lie to you? I knew in my gut I wasn't supposed to marry her. I knew. And the only reason I went through with it, because I had an aunt and uncle that were coming in from Chicago. That's it. It's the only reason I went through with it. I knew. I went back over to Iraq. Did our last 4 or 5 months. And came home to something I never thought I'd envision. Me and her went at it. Went at it for the next year. And I had to divorce her. I couldn't do it anymore. My mom again cried, you can't, I didn't raise you like this, Walter, Stephen, I didn't raise you like this. You got to go back to her. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm not going back to her. Like, who, you love her over me? It was a mess. It was a mess. And I fought back and forth with it, you know? And she had these 2 boys. And I love these 2 boys. I love these 2 boys so much I ended up staying in their relationship longer than I should have just because of these 2 boys. But I ended up getting a divorce from her. And I came home from that divorce again. No job. I had nothing at this point. I had no bedroom furniture, no couch, no TV. I had nothing. Nothing. I had to go get a car. I had to move back into my parents. 30 years old. You know what it's like at 30 to look your dad in the eye and say, I got nothing, dude. I got to come here. He didn't want to have it happen. I don't blame him. Of course, my mom was like, you do it. Thank goodness. I spent the next 4 or 5 years basically holed up in my old bedroom. I did 3 things. I went to work, I went to the races on Friday nights, and I ate. I ate, and I ate, and I ate. In fact, I ate myself to 320 pounds. Just ate, just kept eating, you know? But something started happening then. Something weird started happening. And I've shared this with some of you guys before. I started thinking about, I started to become enamored by couples. I had this quench, this thirst to find out, why is she with him? Why is he with her? How did they last 20 years? Why did they only last 3 years and get divorced? I just started looking at everybody around me. And it got me out of the house. It got me out of the house. Which unfortunately got me into the bars, back into the booze, back into the women. Although, at 320 pounds, I wasn't getting the women that I was used to getting. And that was kicking my butt. Not to mention that I was carrying things from the war that I didn't realize I was carrying. So now all of a sudden, anxiety and depression and distress and all these things were taking over my life. Man, it got bad. It got bad. Wouldn't show up for work. Wouldn't come home some nights. Drink all my problems away. At least I thought I was. And then my dad said, you need to play softball again. Because I loved baseball. I loved baseball. Baseball is my love. And when you get old and fat, you play softball. So he's like, you got to play softball again. All right, I'll play softball. Well, you got to play for the church. All right, well, that means you got to go to church. I hadn't stepped foot in this church in 20 years. I hadn't stepped foot in any church in about 10 or 15 years. I remember walking in this church one night. I was such a punk rebel still that even though I was working for the Department of Corrections where you're supposed to have it high and tight, I had hair down to my shoulders. Because I was still saying, you are not going to tell me what to do. If I want to grow my hair long, I'm going to stick and grow my hair long. So I devised this plan where I cut my hair, shaved it all underneath around here, and I would keep it up in a ponytail hidden under my cap. And I got it all the way down to my shoulders. I looked like a stinking old washed up surfer. True, I died gone. And I remember sitting in that back row one night, like, let's get this over with. And I'm telling you guys, I don't know what happened at that point. I don't know what happened. I went home and I said, holy crap, I got a roof over my head. I got wheels. I got a really good paying job. I'm still healthy. I didn't lose any of my limbs in the war. It hit me. God got me through it. He got me through it. I was still alive and breathing. Remember we talked about that last night? When you don't have anything, or last week when you don't have anything and you still have your health? If you still have your health, you can move forward. And I remember thinking to myself, what have I done? What have I done? And I didn't know I could do it. I didn't know if I could come to God. I didn't know if I had, I thought I'd done enough damage that he was gone. You know, I thought that it was too late. And I started talking to the youth pastor here, and slowly but surely, things started happening to me. And I started to look back, and I started to think, wait a minute. You put me with an older group of boys and a younger group of boys because it developed a sense of I could get along with anybody. I could get along with anybody. I started to think when I was in the military, if they were the dopers, I got along with them. If they were the hard chargers, I got along with them. That was you, Lord. And then I thought to myself, well, hold on. I also became a leader in the military. I became a leader of men. And then I thought to myself, man, they started to ask me to speak. They would ask me to speak for different groups. You know, we'd have different presentations. They were called lanes. And you'd go to these different groups. And one would tell you to teach you a cordon search. And another one would teach you how to do a roadblock. And another one would teach you how to clear a house. And I was always one of them because of my mission in Iraq. I started thinking about this stuff, you know. I started putting all this stuff together. All the hurt, all the pain, all the stupid decisions, all the dumb mistakes, all the people I'd hurt. I was still alive. I was still breathing. And I heard somebody one time say, God has a purpose for you. And when I thought about all them things, when I thought about everything I had done, when I thought about everything he had taken me through, I went and I told the pastor, and he goes, well, I think I know what it is, but you got to figure it out. And I went home that night, and I said, oh no. Teaching, leader, people person. I'm like, oh no. You know, you don't want me to do that. There is no way you want me to do that. And I shut it up. I kept it to myself. And a couple weeks later, I grew a set. And I went into that same pastor's office. And I said, I think he wants me to be a freak. What? I think he wants me to be a freak. You know, it's kind of like telling someone, I love you. You know, ever got you? What? You love me? I think I'm going to be a... I couldn't even say it. Like, no. What are my friends going to think? No. I love beer too much. No. I love women too much. No. Now look. Now look. If that is not hope, I don't know what that is. We talked for the last couple weeks about, I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope in the future. I had nothing. Nothing until I finally said, I can't do this anymore. What do you want from me? That's a scary thing to ask God, right? I mean, look what that guy we just heard 20 minutes ago. Here's a guy who's got a successful business, sitting on the couch with his family, and God says, get up and go overseas to Arab country. It's scary to ask God what he wants from us. But that's the best plan for you. That's the best plan for you. And it doesn't matter. At that point in my life, it didn't matter how many drugs I took. It didn't matter how many pills I popped. Listen, it didn't matter how many girls I slept with. None of that mattered. What the thing I can't stand, I have my friends, I hate hearing this when people tell me, I believe in God, I know he's up there, but I'm too far gone. Nobody is too far gone. Nobody. I don't care what you've done in your life. Nobody is too far gone. If you take one thing out of here tonight, you take that. And I don't care what age you are. I don't care if you're 50 or 20, 18, 10. I don't care. You are in this room for a reason. The people that watch me for a reason. Not because of me, but because of God. Because God wants you to hear these things. God wants you here. God wants them people to listen. I say it all the time. We're all here still because of God. That means he has something for you. He took me through all that mess to get me to this point. He's taking you guys through everything you've been through, and I know some of your guys' past, and they're ugly like mine. And that's okay. That's okay. Because there's no way I should be up here doing this. There's no way you guys keep coming back every week. There's no way I should have a YouTube video. There's no way. I should have AIDS, 400 kids. Seriously. There's no way. That's why I love you guys so much. I love hearing your stories. I don't care about your past. I don't care if you cheated on someone last night. I don't care how many times you've been divorced. I don't care, because neither does God. I'm proof of that. I'm proof of that. There's hope there. There's hope there, okay? We talked about all the things Joseph went through. We talked about all the things Job went through. I could sit here for the next week and tell you guys details. Nasty, salacious details. But there's no point in it. Paul, one of the greatest Christians to ever walk on this earth, murdered Christians. That's what he did before he became a Christian. He murdered them. Do you guys realize when we go to heaven, there's going to be murderers up there? There's going to be people that kill people. Everybody's entitled to this. Everybody's entitled to this. I am no better than any of you guys. I am not any more special than any of you guys. My favorite memory verse comes from Job. Go figure. I'm convinced you can do anything and everything. Nothing and no one can deter your plans. I am living proof of that because I tried to wreck every single thing that ever came into my life. I wrecked relationships. I wrecked every female I ever met. All I did was wreck. I wrecked homes. I had that title for a while, home wrecker. And I wrecked myself. And God still is using me. He's using me. And that's what you take tonight, guys. That's what you take from this. No matter where you're at right now, no matter what your past is, God wants to use you. You're here because He wants to use you. You might not think that, but it's the truth. Every one of you. Everybody that watches it, everybody in here. God has a plan for you. He has a plan for you. It might not be a preacher, okay? Trust me, you don't want to be one. It's not what you think it is. But you all have something. It could be the best mom in the country. It could be who knows what. You have something. You have a purpose. And that's all I want you guys to understand in 2018. When you finally say, God, I'm ready. When you finally say, I can't do this on my own, you will find your purpose. And once you find your purpose in life, you'll start to move toward it. You'll start to move toward it. Don't let anything deter you from that, especially your past. Do not walk out of this room tonight thinking, I can't, because you can. Salvation is for everyone. Titus 2:11. For the grace of God has appeared, bringing salvation for all people. All. Nowhere in the Bible does it say you can be saved except if you were divorced, except if you slept with too many people, except if you took drugs. It doesn't say it anywhere. It just says you can be saved. All people. Ask, and He will answer. Knock, and the door will be open. Seek, and you will find. That's Jesus. That's Sermon on the Mount. Nowhere in there does He say, except, unless. There's no exceptions. Stop making excuses. Stop saying you can't. Be the best person you can be in 2018. Are you going to have problems? Yeah. Is it going to stink sometimes? Yeah. You going to have pain and suffering? Yeah. Are you going to have 10 minutes of your sermon cut out? Yeah. But it happens. It's okay. You move forward. You keep pushing forward. Bow your heads. Lord, I thank You for tonight. I thank You for everybody that's here tonight. I thank You for everybody that will listen. One thing, Lord, let them take out of here that it does not matter. It does not matter what they've done and who they've done it to. It doesn't matter, Lord. All that matters is that You want their heart. You have them here. You want them for a purpose, Lord. I pray that You let Your love and Your grace wash over every single person in this room. Every single person that listens to me on YouTube. Be with us as we go forward this week. Give us what we need. I ask this in Your name. Amen. Thanks, guys. I love you. Start putting prayer requests in. The power of prayer is amazing.